Welcome to Real Scoop Live, a show for pool chemistry enthusiasts where we talk about all the coolest chemistry stuff you never knew you wanted to know. Any chemical advice or suggestions are opinion and utilized at the discretion of each individual pool operator. With that out of the way, let's start the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Scoop Live with Stacee and the boys. Today, we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we've had in the year 2021. I think if one word could sum up the year, it would be inconsistency. So that's what the guys are going to talk about today. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to them. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Stacey. Good morning, everybody. Of course, you might be watching this when it's the afternoon or the evening, so happy day anyway. You know, we were kind of talking about what we would do for the last show of the season, season one of the Real Scoop, and Brett brought up a really good idea about the peaks and the valleys and the inconsistencies that all of us have kind of gone through this whole season, based on, kind of like the Friends deal, like will they or won't they? Will they have chlorine? Won't they have chlorine? If they have chlorine, will it be tabs? Will it be liquid? Will it be cal hypo or none, or like with dichlor, where I'm not going to have any. So we thought we'd talk about what the results of that were, because we've had a lot of calls from people that are asking about issues that they're having with, why am I having a higher pH this year? Why am I having lower pH this year? Why is my chlorine being so inconsistent? And sometimes the callers aren't putting two and two together, that if you're using a lot of liquid chlorine as opposed to tabs, well, that would definitely have a reason why your pH would be higher, right, so to speak. So with that, we'll have Brett, you brought up this subject, so why don't you give us kind of a rundown about the kind of stuff that we want to talk about, if you're there.
All right, so I am here. I apologize if I sound like I've been caught in the Matrix or am being digitally pulled apart. That's actually right along with what we're talking about today. Consistency. That's what I'm looking for in an internet service. So if anyone has any suggestions, please reach out. Consistency is usually what we want to shoot for during a pool season. And over the last, however long people have had pools up and running, there's been a lot of established norms that people started doing. So tabs have usually been plentiful, readily available, and people know how to take care of the issues that are caused by tabs. All right, we've got a pH of around 3. So usually we have to add soda ash to bring the pH back up to the normal range. So people usually would have tabs, soda ash, and any other ancillary things that they use to take care of the pool. That all kind of went out the window this year, because with tabs not as readily available, people were kind of grasping at whatever they could, any port in a storm really, to try and keep their pools up and running. And what happened there was, tabs are kind of unique in that they provide a regulated, steady amount of chlorine going in over a decent amount of time, whereas most other types of chlorine that you're throwing in, it's kind of like a flash in the pan. You add it, it's in there, it can get really high, and then it goes away pretty quick. So what we had was a lot of peaks and valleys over the course of the summer, and not just with chlorine. But that's just kind of a good example of some of the issues that caused some of the other issues moving forward. So let's think of, like, in the example of liquid chlorine. We're going to add a bunch of liquid chlorine at the start of the week because we want to have some chlorine in our pool. So what are a couple issues that can happen when we add a boatload of chlorine to any pool at any one time? Matt, you got a couple?
Well, I mean, this is all region specific, but if you think about people that have an automatic cover, if you're putting in a high amount of chlorine at one time, you put a cover over it, then you have not only the chlorine staying in there for a long time, but then the opportunity for the chlorine to help bleach the vinyl, or to gas off as chlorine gas and get trapped between the water and the cover, that kind of thing. But also, the more chlorine you put in, the higher your pH goes, because like we know, the pH of liquid chlorine is much, much higher than the pH of cal hypo or even dichlor or trichlor. right? So,
and with your pH going higher, then it also reduces the effectiveness of the chlorine that you've added. And if people only had soda ash in their garage, because historically they'd only ever used tabs, that's not going to do anything to help that. So there was one thing that's changed that people weren't ready for. So if they added soda ash on top of that, they made their problem even worse, and then could potentially even cause clarity issues, algae outbreaks, everything else like that. Not to
scale.
mention, with ridiculously high chlorine, you could also negate some other pool products that are in there to specifically keep things in check. So like a staining scale, high levels of chlorine can kill your staining scale or break it down. The staining scale will actually use up some of the chlorine, so they're fighting each other and not working together. And now you've got stains on the bottom because you've added so much extra chlorine to the water that the metals are falling out of solution and potentially causing patches or markings all over your pool walls or bottoms or anything like that. So just from
Hey,
one
Brett,
change.
I actually had multiple conversations this week about that same thing, about having high chlorine, because, we're filming this at the end of September. And so there's a lot of people asking about winterizing, which we've done as a Real Scoop Live before, about winterizing. But if you think about high chlorine, and exactly what you said with stain and scale, it's the same idea with algicide, with enzymes, with clarifiers, and what you have essentially is you have underperforming ancillary chemicals and then chlorine that's not consistent, right? Because it gets eaten up. So it's kind of like canceling each other out. As a matter of fact, one of the ladies I spoke with this week said, oh, yeah, well, they cancel each other out. And I said, well, that's why, we promote using Easy Pool as winterizing, because that doesn't cancel each other out, right? And it just makes it a lot easier. But so to your point, that happened all year. As a matter of fact, sorry, I kind of interrupted your flow.
Oh,
I
you're
just
good.
had a conversation this morning with the lady that has been using a treatment for mustard algae that's based in sodium bromide. And the reason why they had to use that is because of the inconsistencies of the style of chlorine they're using and how long it lasts and what it does to the water chemistry, the actual water chemistry. And so they've been fighting mustard algae all year. And so I said, well, how much of that mustard treatment have you put in? She said, well, it was 6 ounces, and a week later 6 ounces, another week later 6 ounces, then it was a 2-pounder, and that was another 6 ounces. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, the thing is that sodium bromide, and that's what a lot of people aren't considering, because normally you would only use a sodium bromide based product or like a mustard treatment like once or twice a year.
Yeah.
But because of the inconsistencies that are associated with all the other things that people have to do in order to keep a sanitizer reading, she ended up using like 5 pounds of sodium bromide, and you just don't want to do that, because sodium bromide is like sodium chloride in that it's a salt that doesn't go away. So if you're using that, essentially what happens is that your chlorine ends up turning, instead of hypochlorous acid, turns to hypobromous acid, which isn't protected by UV rays from the sun. So now you're actually hurting your pool more when you're thinking that you're helping your pool. See?
Yep.
So that's the kind of things when we're talking about peaks and valleys. You have a peak of 1 or 2 days, or maybe even 3 days of a high chlorine that's awesome, but then you have 2 or 3 days where it's coming down. And so by the end of the week, before your service company gets there, or before you think to put the product in, you could potentially have 2 or 3 days where you have chlorine that's not high enough to stave off algae.
Yep.
So then,
and building up combined chlorine that you'll then have to take care of later with additional chlorine or non-chlorine shock, which causes you to go to another peak. So it's up and down and up and down and up and down.
and I think that this is part of the whole idea or the whole rationale behind API when we talk about being proactive, not reactive. Because you get to a point like that where, say, like on a Saturday, you go out and your service company doesn't come out, or maybe you don't treat until Sunday, and you have a green pool or something wrong with it when you go in to enjoy the pool, and so you react to that and you're like, crap, what can I do? And of course, if it's a DIY person, what they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, well, if I have a little bit of algae, even though the algae 60 says it's 7 ounces per 12,000 or 15,000 gallons for a troubleshooting dose, they think, well, 7 ounces, I got about 32, so I'm just going to put in more, right? Yeah. And it's the same thing, and not so much with algicide, but with clarifier, it's definitely a problem. When you have a petroleum-based clarifier and you overdose, then essentially you are creating a cloud in your pool that doesn't dissipate. So that's.
I'm I'm going to share a quick story from a retailer that I visited earlier this year, which she had the best description for clarifiers. There's absolutely a place for every type of clarifier out there. There are different ones that might be petroleum based that can actually cause clarity issues if you add too much of it, because it builds up and you've got essentially too much of the clarifier in there, and it causes the haziness to actually get worse and hang out longer. Now, there are ones out there that are not petroleum based, which this particular retailer described as man logic proof, which I absolutely loved. She said, "How come this one's a little bit more expensive than the El Cheapo one over here?" And she said, "Well, that one's man logic proof." And she was like, "You're gonna have to give me a little bit more on that one." She said, "Well, I know my husband. If we've got a cloudy pool and he goes out and sees I need to add 8 ounces per 10,000 gallons, and he's got a quart bottle, just like Matt said, he said, well, I'd probably better add the whole thing, make sure it works faster." Whereas that can actually cause the
issue, right? And so, there are chitosan based clarifiers, and what makes those so good is that you can't overdose those. So the more you put in, the faster it clears. So to Brett's point, as his internet catches up with him, pretty much what happens essentially is that if you have a chitosan based clarifier, you can put as much as you want in, and the more you put in, the faster it clears. It's the same thing with the Revive Weekly. Although it's not chitosan based, it's also not petroleum based. So the more you put in, the more stuff it pulls out. Where with a petroleum based clarifier, if you do that same thing, essentially what you're doing is that you're changing the ionic charge of the cloud and then promoting cloudy water, because there's no way to undo that. So, Brett, you back?
just takes time.
There
I
you
am.
go. All right.
Thanks for the assist.
Oh yeah, man.
One other thing, which is actually not specifically chemically related, but as we all know, pools are interrelated systems, that everything has to be working right for everything to be functioning properly. Specifically water flow, how much flow is going through the system, how little water flow is going through the system, if you've got too much. And one of the big wrenches that got thrown in this year was with the mandate of over X horsepower pump, it now has to be variable speed. Most homeowners, and I'm guilty of this as well, if I get a new toy, I want to play with it. It's really hard to play with a brand new pretty variable speed pump, apart from playing with the dials, turning it up, turning it down, trying to control how fast it's going.
Well, especially when you paid as much as you have to pay for those, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you kind of want to see what it can do.
Apart from the fact that some of them are very, very powerful, and if your piping isn't quite up to snuff, because maybe your pool was built 30 years ago, and you could pop filters, you could blow lines. If you've got too much water moving through your filter at any one time, it can actually channel through sand or not have enough time in the filter to actually properly grab all the stuff that's in there. If it's moving too slow, or say your homeowner thought, well, I want to really maximize my electricity savings, so I'm going to shut it off for 20 hours a day and only run it for 4 hours. And then they start complaining to their pool company that, hey, my water's going cloudy. You're never going to get it cleared up if you aren't running enough. So that was actually a common troubleshooting question we had to start asking this year. Did they get a new variable speed pump? And has your type A homeowner gone out there and started tinkering with the control pad? So that was another fun one too, because inconsistency with your flow and how well your filtration's functioning can have as big an impact on your water quality and clarity as improper chemical treatments too.
That's a big thing, because a lot of people don't realize that, and that's the whole point of this show, is that things that you had been doing and ways that you were used to doing things were kind of all thrown in the mixer this year. Everyone had to find a way to treat pools, keep pools clear, based on all the changes. So I have to commend the professionals in our industry for being able to roll with the punches this year, and for the most part, it worked out. And again, so what we're talking about are those conversations that we've had where some things didn't work out, because we really get, we get a lot of calls into the call center, as Stacey can attest to, that are complementary. You know, I'm so glad that I'm on your products, doing this, you know, all the other stuff. It's so much easier and all that. But this isn't about that necessarily. This is about the calls that people say, can you guys help me with this? Because something happened, you know, and so we have to figure out, well, what exactly happened? And a lot of times it's like, well, I mean, if you talk about a variable speed pump, and then you're talking about in areas where you're not supposed to backwash anymore, or people are trying to make their cartridge elements last longer than they probably should, or so a lot of people are taking care of their own pools over service companies in certain areas because they can't afford the service companies anymore. And then they might be using stuff that's from a big box store or that are imported or that, you know, whatever. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that Brett and I really enjoy, because you have to put your pool Sherlock Holmes hat on in order to find out what the problem, how it was created. You know, most of the time, the way to fix it is rather simple, right? It's just that you have to know the context of where that problem came from in order to fix it correctly and quickly, right?
Because one, Matt, I
Right.
don't want to step on what you're saying here, but
No,
this
all
is
good.
for the past 100 years, it's been kind of agreed upon that if you have a problem with your pool, most people bludgeon it with chlorine. And the issue with that is most times it actually works.
Yeah.
So people got used to just bludgeoning their pool with chlorine, but there's other ways to finesse the problems where you don't have to bludgeon it, where you don't end up having to use as much chlorine. You can accomplish the same goals without having to just completely destroy the pool with really high levels of chlorine to get to the same end result. So this season, with a lot of the shortages and problems that people have had getting products, regardless of what type they are, has really made the industry as a whole step up their game and look into these other ways to finesse a pool back to where it needs to be rather than just beating it down. Which is, it's kind of exciting to see, because you see people, they'll call me and be like, hey, I tried what you talked about the other day and it actually worked. And I was like, yes, it's awesome. Let's do another one.
I actually had a call at the end of last week that said that they had an issue with a purple pool, and that the Real Scoop Live video on purple pools helped them to fix it. So if you if you're listening to this, realize that this is the 6th or 7th episode that we've done, or maybe the 8th episode that we've done this season. And so if you go to YouTube, you can look at all the other ones. So not necessarily that you'd watch them all, although you probably, you should. We always want you to like and subscribe, because that helps us to know who's watching, helps us prepare content and all the other stuff. But that's something that you can relate to with new hires, with people that work your floor, or with service companies, service employees that are going out and taking care of pools. That way they have those answers, how did it start? How can you describe it to the homeowner or to your consumer that comes into your store? And then how can you fix it, right? So that's essentially what we're trying to do here with RSL. And hopefully it's like in a fun manner, right? Because we want to be entertaining, because everybody knows how dry chemistry can be sometimes. But yeah, that's
pool humor.
Oh, brother.
Very good.
Okay, so Brett, we are coming to the our arbitrary time limit. What is there anything else that you want to say prior to signing off?
Since this is kind of the last one for this season, everyone, thanks for rolling with the punches. It's been a fun season. It's going to be a lot more fun and a little bit more of the same next year too. So keep your eyes and ears open. Always investigate things that can make your life easier and your pools more consistent, because that's going to make your lives easier overall. That's pretty much all I got. Is thanks everyone, and we did it. Another one in the books.
All right, so just as a reminder to everybody, we are on all the social medias. Most of them are under apiwater.com. API Water. We have all of our stuff is on apiwater.com. You're probably watching this on YouTube. If you are so inclined, we have the audio version on Spotify. We would really appreciate any kind of likes or subscriptions that we can get. If you have questions or comments, feel free to put them here where you're watching it, or email us at Stacee, CET at apiwater.com.
info@apiwater.com.
Info@apiwater.com. Everything that we talk about is about our products, all the info about our products, all the info that you could need is on our website at apiwater.com. So with that, we will call it a season. Thank you so much. We'll see you in season 2 in the spring of 2022. Depending on when you're watching this, we want to wish you a great weekend, holiday season, off season, all that stuff. So that's it. Stacey, take it away.
All right. Don't forget to like and follow us on YouTube and Spotify, like Matt said. And also all of our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram. So follow and like us there. And if you have any questions or you have ideas for future episodes, you can call or text us. That number is 877-274-7261. Thank you and have a great day. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Are you on social media? API is too. We invite you to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Spotify, and if you're feeling crafty, Pinterest.